You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Shoe In Show, the world's greatest footwear business podcast, because it's probably the only world
it's gotta be no
footwear business podcast that's out there, focusing actually on the business, the revenue, the operations of footwear companies. We cover some fashion, but typically it's always curious about how these companies operate their businesses differently, Matt, and focus on different audiences and customers. And our job at FDRA is kind of to look at the overall industry and see where the trend lines are to help them as they navigate cost issues, price issues, inventory issues. My God, that's probably the biggest issue right now as we look towards the holiday season.
Yeah, there's a lot of data that's out there. It comes in fast and furious, and having Gary Rains, our chief economist, on our team to help us take in the data, review it, analyze it, and then kind of repackage it and send it out to our members is really important. And Gary, you do such a good job of that. We've had in the last few weeks a number of data points come in on inflation, and continues to be high, 40-year plus increases on footwear prices, which is historic for all of us in our 40s. And then you look at like the inventory to sales ratio, which continues to show the inventory positions are very, very strong, but demand is weakening by the day. And then you head into holiday where, you might see some of this promotional activity. So the last thing we want to do, or the first thing we want to do, is kind of talk about the import side of things. We've talked about inflation, we've talked about demand, and we'll probably get to those things. But right now we're bringing in a lot of product. We really are. And the spigot hasn't really been turned off as of yet. So welcome back to Shoe In as always. And where are we on the import side as we sit here in 2022?
Hey, thank you, gentlemen. Good to be back with you. It's, as they say oftentimes in economics, the best cure for one ailment is that ailment. And or maybe the opposite could go, that the best cure for that good news is that good news, as ironic as that sounds. And we're seeing that really playing out in footwear imports. That the good news is in July, we saw just these record shipments, record dollars, customs value worth of shipments, record duties, record import charges. On the one hand, while record shipments coming into the U.S. are great, on the other hand, that has a kind of a dark underbelly to it. That as you're saying, we're seeing these record shipments, but demand is struggling. And over the long term, supply and demand tend to flow largely in step with one another. But this year, that's not the case at all. We're seeing that the value of shipments this year is up some 34% from the same period last year. But at the same time, footwear spending is only up about 4%. So you've got this imports, this proxy of supply that is far outstripping this growth in demand. And that is something we have not ever seen in data going back more than a quarter century. And I think that's going to lead us into, as you said, the prospects for some discounting closer to holiday season or deeper into 2023.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the import issue, because I think what we thought would happen is that when over the summer, when everybody realized their warehouses were full and shoes weren't moving quite as fast as they thought, that we would see a tapering of imports. But I don't think that's the case. I think there's still a lot of shoes coming into the U.S. And so what is it? I mean, obviously last year we had really high demand. We had a record year in sales. We couldn't get the shoes in fast enough. So fast forward to this year, we're bringing in the shoes right and left. They're not moving as fast, to say it nicely, but we're still importing. We haven't slowed the imports to match the slow in sales, Gary. So where are we at?
This I think is a consequence of indirectly of COVID. Kind of the fallout from COVID. Really, an industry. Sign of long COVID, maybe, that not from the epidemiological perspective, but from the supply chain perspective, that we saw, of course, the shipments and were lacking in 2020. We saw, of course, all that government stimulus thrown to the consumer in 2020 and into 2021. Demand was phenomenal last year. We saw not only record growth, but record dollar value of footwear demand last year. And of course, we're kind of playing catch up now after seeing, strong growth in imports last year. That strong growth is kind of continuing this year. So you've got that, supply chain that is really out of balance. As I said a few moments ago, we've got supply that is really outstripping demand. So while demand may be a record this year, it's not really going to feel like it because the rate of growth in that demand is going to slow sharply from what was witnessed last year. Coming back to talk about the import cost for a minute, as I said earlier, not only are we seeing the dollar value at a record level this year, but import charges and duties are as well, and that is driving up the average cost for footwear coming into the U.S. And of course, that has knock-on implications for retail prices as well. As Matt had said earlier, while we're seeing these really sharp year-over-year increases in footwear prices for now, with supply outstripping demand, I think there's going to come a reckoning that as that kind of comes back into balance, I think it's going to weigh on prices later this year and early into 2023.
I mean, isn't that exactly what the Fed wants at this point, right? So are you seeing, I guess, other industries kind of continue to stockpile goods from an import perspective, while at the same time demand is softening, while at the same time will drive us to more promotional pricing activity at the retail level? So are you seeing that elsewhere? Is that unique to footwear? What do you think about when you think about other industries?
Yeah, great question. It is not really limited to footwear at all. In fact, we've shared data how the level of inventories, retail inventories in the U.S. is growing just at a phenomenal clip to an unprecedented high. Not footwear inventories necessarily, but just all of retail. So yeah, it is much broader than just a footwear-centric issue at all. It has, I think, much broader implications. And I think footwear is largely just kind of along for the ride in that perspective, that footwear inventories are rebuilding rapidly. And I think you're going to see that latent downside cost pressure in the months ahead.
What is that human nature? I mean, I'm trying to think like down to like the very nature of the people sitting at a computer terminal, placing new orders and then bringing what about, if it's not just footwear, if it's a broad-based thing, what about human nature? I don't want to be totally psychoanalysis guy, but what about human nature is driving all of our consumer goods society to say, hey, we need more crap, even though we know that our demand's going to kind of soften. Kind of what's the mentality behind that?
Yeah, two cliches here. Lightning always strikes twice, and the pendulum always tends to swing too far and overcorrect. And I think we're seeing that play out here. That on supply channels with imports, as I said, are far outpacing demand. That pendulum has swung too far in one direction and is overcorrecting, and is going to have to go back in the other direction.
Yeah, so that pendulum does swing back and forth for sure. I think you could probably write volumes of books about all of this once it's said and done, and we're long gone because this has just been a super strange time, Andy. So imports are up, demand is softening, and it's a recipe for lower prices, I guess, which is a good thing. I don't know. It's the whole thing's weird, but I'll let you close us out. You're muted. Struggling.
Yeah, and I think I think you're exactly right. It is a strange time, and it's, I think the challenge for footwear companies has been, you look at 2020 when we start COVID, they had to quickly adjust all their strategies. 2021 hit, and they had to import a lot of shoes in to meet the consumer demand. 2022 hits, and then all of a sudden they keep importing a lot of shoes because they're not sure whether demand will soften or not. And then now, as we look at 2023, we're pretty sure it is going to soften, yet people are still bringing in a lot of shoes. So at some point, we're going to, I think the challenge is the pendulum swinging too far, too fast over the last couple of years, Matt, and hopefully we can slow that down a little bit. There's always going to be a pendulum swing. You always talk about inventory being an art versus a science, and hopefully we can just get that pendulum swinging a little bit slower and not as much in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And that's our job at FDRA, is to help showcase this information to our members and help them think through where they sit in the marketplace against the broader economic conditions, the industry conditions at the factory, and the cost of the materials and the shipping, and try to find a better way forward for their strategies to try to sharpen those. So again, the quick hit today, but we felt this information is really important as we lead into the holidays, because we know that, holiday planning has already started, and right now they're probably refining and going into it from retail side. But the planning for 2023 has also begun as we look towards next year. And so this is really important as we try to figure out where we're at and how many shoes we actually make and all those things. So we appreciate you listening. Again, shoeandshow.com is our full catalog of information. We've had some great shows as of recently. Please go back and listen to those. And drop us a line if there's something in particular that you're dealing with in your company that we should talk about on our show and bring an expert on. Let us know. We're happy to do that too. This is the Footwear Industry's podcast, and we want to focus on footwear challenges and opportunities and solutions for our member companies in the broader industry. With that, thank you very much. Enjoy your pumpkin lattes and pumpkin everything that's out there. Maybe somebody will make a pumpkin spice shoe. We'll see. I don't know. Till next time, we're out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.